night air above the Platte tasted like pennies and exhaust, a thin metallic film that clung to my tongue no matter how many times I swallowed. I stood on the pedestrian bridge behind the Riverside Hotel and watched the ballroom windows glow like aquariums, people drifting, mouths opening and closing, oblivious. My phone screen showed the countdown I'd set, 000612. When it hit 0, the sprinkler test I'd scheduled with a spoofed service request would trigger in the West Ballroom. The gala would pause, doors would open. Damon would step outside to call his fixer, because Damon never got wet if he could help it, and that's where I'd be. My breath fogged, light and quick. Below, the river murmured like someone trying not to cry. I shifted the envelope in my jacket, bank statements creased from too many readings, copies of my mother's forged signature, a burner USB with a recording of Damon laughing while saying my name like a slur. In my other pocket, a cheap voice recorder, and the wedding band I still wore out of habit, even though the woman who gave it back to me now wore Damon's ring. I wasn't here to push him into the river. I told myself that twice. Then once more for the part of me that didn't entirely believe it. I was here for a different kind of death, the kind that ends a man's story in public. Reputation, clients, accounts. The kind of ending that leaves a body walking but empties the room when it arrives. Across the water, a horn blared and cut off. The bridge trembled underfoot as a freight train rolled somewhere I couldn't see. The timer ticked to 00041. I closed my eyes and saw the shop my father had started, heart heating and air, before Damon convinced him to scale. I saw my mother's hands, chapped and small, counting petty cash that wasn't petty anymore. I saw my bank app that week, $472.13, and the red underlined payment returned. 6 minutes from now, I would ask Damon a question I'd been practicing in the shower, in traffic, awake at 3 a.m. Do you remember what you took the first time? And when he answered, I planned to take everything back, with the crowd watching. But what if the crowd turned its head again?
My name is Evan Hart, 33, born 3 miles from Coursefield and drafted, unwillingly, into the family business the way sons in our neighborhood often were. I'm a diagnostic tech, was anyway, for Hart Heating and Air, which started in a garage with a single ladder and a logo my mother painted in our kitchen. She wrote Hart with the A as a little red house. For 2 decades, it meant we show up and we fix it, and we don't leave until it's warm. Then Damon came home, older by 4 years, beautiful in the way people who never hear no become. Expensive hair, casual grin, a wristwatch that looked like it cost more than my truck. He'd left Denver for Phoenix, then Vegas, then consulting. The first time I heard the word fund in our kitchen was his mouth teaching it to my parents. Private equity, he said, and it sounded like a cologne. You've hit your ceiling, he said to Dad, voice gentle as a hand on a shoulder right before the shove. Scaling meant a loan we couldn't smell but could drown in. It meant a company card we used for coffee because Damon told us to network. It meant uniforms that matched and an app that routed us like we were chess pieces he moved from his phone. It also meant late paychecks, silent rooms when you asked questions, and my mother signing things her wrists didn't want to sign. Outside of the shop, my life looked like a small, steady flame. I had Mara, we dated since 25, a high school English teacher who smelled like chalk dust and pear shampoo. We ate at the same taco place on Fridays. We hiked Green Mountain on Sundays. She proposed the camping trip, I proposed the mortgage. We were that kind of couple. Soft plans braided into actual ones. Then Damon asked if she could help with messaging on the website because he wanted a human voice. She said yes because she believes in being useful. A month later, Damon and Mara were just talking. 2 months later, they were complicated. 3 months later, I found my key didn't fit my own townhouse lock anymore. Damon took more than a business plan. He took my future and tried it on in front of me, asked how it looked, and didn't wait for an answer. I moved into the back apartment above the shop, the one that smelled like refrigerant and old coffee, and learned how quiet a ceiling can be at midnight when all your noises live in your chest. Dad kept shrugging in a way that made his shirt hang wrong. Mom started smoothing receipts as if they were hair on a sick child. Damon walked through like a CEO, tapping his phone, promising float and runway and next quarter until the words meant calendar pages, not cash. I still did the work. Crawled in attic spaces where the fiberglass itched my forearms for days, replaced cracked heat exchangers that hissed like bad moods, wiped my hands on a rag that never got clean. People smiled when the air turned the right temperature, an immediate metric I could trust. Damon's metrics lived in spreadsheets and men named Trent. The first late fee on our supplier account was a pebble in a shoe, annoying, ignorable. The fourth was pain. I went to Damon with printouts and numbers. He lifted his hand without looking and said, "Not now, Ev. The way you wave away a bee you aren't actually afraid of." He called me Ev only when he needed me to feel smaller. When Dad's chest began to hurt, indigestion, we told ourselves, stress, the doctor told us, we rearranged routes so we had mornings off. Damon sent flowers to the hospital and a selfie with the cardiologist like it was a ribbon cutting. Mom cried into a paper towel and wouldn't tell me why. That was the summer I started keeping a ledger of what Damon had taken and from whom. It began with money. It grew teeth. $3,000 from petty cash to front the vendor. Mara's laugh repurposed. Dad's name on a personal guarantee. My mother's actual signature on a line she swore she didn't touch. The ledger lived under my mattress in a manila folder labeled Filters, 20 by 25. I was a coward in the way honest men become cowards. I wanted proof no one could ignore. On July 8th, the city smells like hot tar and spilled beer. I was fixing a unit for an elderly client, Mrs. Liu, who fed me lemon cookies and told me my face looked kinder than last time because the weather had backed off. My phone buzzed. Damon, urgent. I didn't answer. He called again and again. When I finally picked up, he said, "You still have the truck, right? Like our livelihood was a screwdriver I might have misplaced." "I'm at a call," I said. "Drop it," he said. "We need to move some equipment before the bank comes." There it was. Not runway, not pitch, the bank. My shirt stuck to my back. "What equipment?" I asked. "The rental units in the back," he said quickly. "Temporary, paperwork thing. Be a brother." The thing about being a brother is that it's a verb you can weaponize. I told Mrs. Liu her fan motor needed another 15 minutes and drove back to the shop, heart chiming my throat one rung at a time. The rental units were gone when I got there. The back door was propped open with a bucket of screws. Mom sat at the break table, knuckles white around a styrofoam cup. She didn't look up when I came in. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "Home," she said, lying down. On the table, under her hand, lay a paper I recognized without reading. The bank's logo, a blue stamp that said "Past Due," a line where Eleanor Hart appeared in ink that wasn't hers. "What did he make you sign?" I asked. Mom shook her head once, a tiny movement like she was trying to convince the room, not me. "It's handled," she said, using Damon's favorite verb. That night, the apartment's window let in the smell of rain and someone's cigarettes. I took the ledger from under the mattress and wrote "Past Due" in block letters across the blank page. When I closed my eyes, I didn't see numbers. I saw Damon's watch catching light like a fish. I saw Mara's hand on his shoulder, her face doing the math of good intentions and bad timing. People like to say blood is thicker than water, as if viscosity solves anything. Damon taught me something truer. Greed is thicker than either. The first time he stole from me, he was 12 and I was 8, and he took my Halloween money for a bet that would double it. He never paid me back, but he made me laugh while he kept the bills. The second time, he took my chance to leave Denver for community college because he needed me on the routes while he built. The ledger wasn't just numbers. It was an index of our family. So when I say I planned Damon's death, understand that planning had become my dialect. The trick was choosing what I meant by death. The trick was not letting it choose me first. But what if the house of cards crushed the person holding it?
The letter from the insurer arrived on a Wednesday that smelled like rain and dust. Policy beneficiary change confirmation. Dad's life insurance had been retitled with Hart Holdings LLC as beneficiary. I held the letter over the sink like it might drip. Mom swore she hadn't signed anything. Dad swore he must have authorized it in the stack. Damon swore a lot in group texts, lots of all above board and stop spiraling, Ev, and I'm in meetings. That night, Dad's chest hurt again. This time we called 911. The siren's Doppler pitch sliced our block in half. I followed the ambulance to Presbyterian St. Luke's. Taillights smeared red in the wet. The ER smelled like antiseptic and overwashed sheets. A tech clipped a pulse ox to Dad's finger, and it glowed alien blue. Mom rubbed the heel of her hand into her sternum like she could push dread out the way you work air out of plastic. Damon arrived in a suit no one else could afford and kissed Mom on the hairline like a photograph of a good son. "We'll get through this," he said to the room. To me, take care of the shop in the morning. The "we" did a lot of work in his mouth. In the hallway I cornered him, the fluorescent lights making his teeth look like polished keys. "Why did you change the beneficiary?" He said, "It's smart, tax efficient." Tax efficient for who? For the company, for all of us. For you, I said, and his smile shifted 3 degrees colder. "What are you implying?" he asked, voice soft in the way pillowcases are soft right before they smother. "I keep receipts," I said. I didn't show him the ledger in my head because Damon liked a fight he could see. I wanted one he couldn't. When I got back to the shop in the morning, the back office was tidy in a way only people who were leaving quickly make things. The file drawers were labeled in Damon's handwriting, but entire folders were missing. Accounts payable, vendor contracts, the paper spine for truck titles. On the desk, a USB drive in a plastic sandwich bag and a sticky note in block letters I didn't recognize. "He won't stop." I plugged the drive into the old office PC because that's what you do when your house is already on fire. You look for the exit by adding more smoke. The file tree held audio recordings named by date. The first one clicked on with a hiss. Damon's voice, "No, I'm not worried about Evan. He's a worker, not a thinker." Another, "We roll the accounts to the new entity, shut the old one down. He'll be happy he still has a truck." Another, laughter, then, "Mom will sign anything if I keep Dad calm." I took off my headphones because the room tilted. My mouth tasted like aluminum. Outside, the rain slowed to a mist and made the parking lot shine like a movie set that overdid it. At noon, a man in a navy polo with front-range fire and safety stitched over the pocket walked in with a clipboard. He was early for the quarterly sprinkler test Damon usually scheduled. "Routine," he said, while I watched water bead on his eyelashes. "We're also testing the system at the riverside." "The hotel?" I asked. He nodded. "West Ballroom. Tonight, midnight maintenance window." My heart adjusted its tempo like it was deciding whose band to play in. I signed his work order and felt the pen leave 2 deep grooves in the paper. Midnight. Riverside. West Ballroom. Damon was hosting a fundraiser there for Heart Cares, the nonprofit he founded last month for workforce training that hadn't trained anyone yet but had a very nice logo. I texted Mara because I am both a man who remembers how love smells and a man who wants pain to confess. "You going tonight?" She replied an hour later, working check-in, "Don't make trouble, Evan." I drove to my parents' bungalow after the afternoon route. The house smelled like lemon oil and hospital bracelets. Dad slept in his recliner, the blanket up to his chin. Mom sat at the kitchen table, turning a ceramic salt shaker in her hand as if it had instructions printed on it she couldn't quite read. I put the USB drive and the letter from the insurer on the table. "I think Damon is moving money we can't see. I think he's setting us up to take the fall." She flinched like I slapped her with a word. "He's your brother." "And I'm your son," I said. "Which one of us brings groceries?" She looked at the drive like it might bite. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the condensation on a glass like it might spell something. "I'm going to let Damon tell on himself, and I'm going to make sure the right people hear it." Mom reached across the table and laid 2 fingers on my wrist like she used to when I couldn't sleep as a kid, and she'd count my pulse like it owed us something. "Don't become him," she said.
Then help me end him, I thought, but I only nodded. Because what happens to a family when the quiet one stops being quiet?
You can measure paranoia in decibels. In the apartment above the shop, every sound were another one's shadow. The ice maker in the break room freezer clicked like a key slipping into a lock. The bay door groaned at 2:13 a.m. and I sat up, heart hammering the tempo of a bad song. Through the blinds, I saw only rain and the glow of the alley light, but the hair on my forearms lifted like it had heard a different weather report. Damon texted more that week than in the past 6 months combined. You good to cover Saturday? Stop by Mom's with flowers. Don't talk to vendors without me. He CC'd me on emails to lawyers with sentences that began, per our discussion, and ended with my name spelled correctly, which he did only when he wanted to print the paper later. Mara called once after midnight. I almost didn't answer, and then I did because love is just another habit with better branding. Please don't come tonight, she said. I could hear the clank of glass in the background, the muted swell of a band doing a decent job. He's tense. Does he know you called me? Yes, she said after a beat, which meant no. Evan, whatever you're collecting, be careful how you spend it. You think I'm going to hit him? I said. I think you're tired, she said, and he's counting on it. The next day, the shop's front door chime made me jump. Trent walked in, the investor Damon said could professionalize us. He smelled like expensive soap and a problem. He looked at me like I was a stubborn appliance no one wanted to replace. We'll need the titles to trucks 2 through 5, he said, not bothering with first names. We'll refinance under the new entity. That entity going to pay the vendors the old one owes? I asked. He smiled thinly. That's not how liability flows. People do, when they don't get paid. He set his card on the counter. Trent Maddox, managing partner. The font tried too hard to be clean. We're all adults. Let's not make this emotional. When he left, I took the ledger from under the mattress and wrote Trent, titles, in a margin already crowded with underlines that looked like claws. I added a star next to Riverside, midnight test. Microplan became plan. Plan grew angles. I went to the hotel that afternoon wearing my old work polo and a tool belt because uniforms make ghosts of men you don't want noticed. The Riverside's West Ballroom smelled like lemon polish and money, even when empty. A crew of caterers folded napkins into triangles small enough to look expensive. I found the maintenance office and pretended to check the sprinkler panel. It ticked with a small, steady confidence. The sound of a machine that didn't care who you were. I added a 12 a.m. routine test to the schedule using the contractor login the front range tech had left open on a tablet. My fingers shook only a little. On the way out, I passed a poster board on an easel. Heart cares. Education for tomorrow. Damon's face smiled from the top right corner. Hands clasped, sleeves rolled like he had just done work instead of just pretending to do it. A QR code led to a donation page with a thermometer that always seemed to be rising. Back at the shop, I printed the audio transcripts from the USB because paper feels more like evidence than waves do. I highlighted. I trashed a page and pulled it back out because I am my mother's son. That night, the apartment smelled like hot dust when the baseboard heaters kicked on, and for the first time since Damon came home, I slept almost an hour in a row. 2 days before the gala, Mom texted, "He brought your father a watch." I drove over. Damon had wrapped it in a box that made Dad look small. "You deserve nice things," Damon said, loud enough for Mom to hear from the kitchen. He fastened it on his wrist like knighting him. Dad smiled, that shy uptilt that makes men look like boys. After Damon left, Dad tried to take the watch off and couldn't work the clasp. He said quietly, "Help me, I don't like how it feels." I slid the watch off and set it face down on the table. The second hand kept moving anyway. "We're going to be okay," I said, because sometimes lying is the only evidence you have that you still love someone. That night, I took the ring from my pocket and placed it on the dresser like a coin you leave on a grave so the dead have something to spend. My phone's timer app hovered under my thumb like a lever. I rehearsed the words I'd say when Damon finally looked at me and saw something he hadn't factored. "Do you remember what you took the first time?" The air in my apartment smelled like rain and a faint sweetness I couldn't place, like oranges left in a warm room. I opened the window to let it out. It stayed. Was the sweetness relief or warning? At 11:58 p.m., the ballroom doors were closed, the string quartet dipping into a song rich people pretended to recognize. I watched from the bridge as servers in black moved like precise shadows. The maintenance room schedule blinked, test in progress.
The hotel's west side sprinklers sputtered to life, clear spray falling like cheap champagne. Shouts, laughter, a chorus of, "Are you kidding?" and "It's fine, it's just water." The doors opened. The crowd spilled onto the terrace, damp silk blooming like bruises. Damon stepped out second, hand on Mara's back. He had his phone to his ear before he'd cleared the threshold. I moved. The bridge's grate tongued under my boots. I hit record on the little black device in my pocket and took the stairs two at a time, world narrowing to a single voice I wanted to catch on a clean line. "No, we're okay," Damon was saying into the phone, laughing with his mouth, not his eyes. "Get Trent to hold the wires until Monday. If anyone calls, it's a vendor issue. No one dies if an invoice waits." He spotted me then, and the smile slid across his face like a shudder. "Eve." He touched the phone away without ending the call. "You're wet," I said. "You're late," he said. He gave Mara a small shove toward the doorway. "Give us a minute." Mara looked at me, then at Damon, then at the river. Her dress darkened where the sprinkler had kissed it. She said, "Don't." One word, no verb. She went inside. I held out the envelope. "Do you remember what you took the first time?" Damon glanced at it and didn't take it. "Which story are we telling?" he asked lightly. "The one where you think you're the only good man in Denver. The one where you stole my Halloween money. For a bet, you promised to double it." He laughed. "You want a refund with interest?" "I want you done," I said. The word came out low and careful, like a pilot talking to a tower at night. He leaned on the railing, water dripping from his hair, eyes little coins under the terrace light. "You can't run this company, Eve. You never wanted to. You like tools because they don't talk back." "I like things that do what they say," I said. "Then be one of them," he said. "I'll keep the talking." Something in me steadied then, not anger, not even the stiff pride of brothers at war, a kind of math. The insurer letter, the vendor titles, the audio. "The what?" he blinked. I clicked the recorder louder in my pocket to make a sound small enough for a human to miss and big enough for a machine to hear. "You moved money you couldn't cover, Damon. You used Mom's signature. You told Trent to roll debt into a shell and let the old one bleed out." He smiled because that was his habit when something kicked him. "You think anyone cares," he said. "You think a judge cares about hurt feelings. They'll see a screw-up tack with a chip on his shoulder and a CEO who tried to save his daddy's shop." Behind us, laughter rose and fell like a tide. Someone started chanting shots. The sprinkler spray slowed to a mist and then stopped. The night tightened. "I'm not going to throw you in the river," I said. "Good," he said mildly. "You'd miss." "I'm going to end you with your own voice." I reached into my pocket and pulled the recorder out enough for him to see it light red. "Say hello." He didn't flinch. He stepped forward and hugged me. His hands patted my back twice like punctuation, and his mouth came to my ear. "Check your back pocket. I'm always 3 moves ahead." When he let go, my wallet was gone. He held it up between 2 fingers, grinning. "You still carry cash. Adorable." He tossed the wallet over the railing. It hit the river with a sound too small to matter. The recorder felt suddenly heavier in my hand. I clicked it off because the only thing worse than catching the wrong truth is catching none at all. Damon's smile widened. "You're not built for this," he said softly. The ballroom doors opened again. Mara appeared in the doorway with a man in a suit I didn't recognize, older, careful. He walked towards us with his hand extended and said, "Even heart, Detective Monroe." Damon's posture changed by degrees. "What's this?" Monroe lifted a photo in a plastic sleeve. It showed a signature on a notarized page. Eleanor Hart. The E was wrong. The loops leaned left. Mom doesn't lean left. "We have questions about a guarantee and a missing title," Monroe said. "Thought we'd start the conversation where you both are." Damon reached for the paper with a confidence that wobbled only when his fingers met plastic. Lawyers love me, he said. Tonight, Monroe said calmly, I need you both to come downtown. Damon turned to me then, and for the first time since we were kids, I saw something I didn't recognize in his face. Not fear, not even anger. Calculation that had lost track of a variable. I didn't call him, I said. Mara's eyes met mine over Monroe's shoulder. She shook her head once. I did, her mouth shaped. So the first twist landed on both of us. Damon wasn't the only one who had been planning. But who did Monroe think he was taking?
The District 6 station smelled like bad coffee and old carpet, a perfume made of impatience. Detective Monroe had the kind of voice that made it sound like your answers were already written down somewhere, and he just needed you to sign. Damon called a lawyer named Hayes, who arrived with a jaw like an iron in a suit that cost percentages. Morris sat in the hall, hands folded around a paper cup, eyes red. Monroe split us. Damon in interview 2, me in 3. The metal chair I sat in had one leg shorter than the others. When I shifted my weight, it ticked against the tile like a metronome. He set a copy of the guarantee on the table. Your mother's signature, he said. You see the problem? She didn't sign it, I said. How do you know? She draws the cross and the H too straight when she's upset, I said without thinking. This one leans right, and the E is wrong. He watched me the way cats watch aquariums. That's precise. My mother writes me grocery lists like love letters. You learn a person's grammar. Monroe nodded once. He pushed a small recorder toward me, pressed REC, said the case number like it was a prayer, and asked me to start at the beginning. I told him about the sprinkler test in the balcony and the recording of Damon calling me a worker, not a thinker. I told him about Trent and the titles. I did not tell him about the ledger under my mattress because men like Monroe either respect paper you bring them or they confiscate it into a box you never see again. When I finished, he leaned back. Do you want to hurt your brother? I want him done, I said. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have that doesn't end with me in your other room. He smiled without using his mouth. Your father's insurance beneficiary was changed in May. Hart Holdings is the recipient. Your brother filed the form. Can you unfile it? If we show intent to defraud, he said. Intent is a shy animal. In the hall, the vending machine hummed at a pitch that made my teeth itch. Damon emerged from interview 2 with Hayes at his shoulder. He looked at me like a math problem that wouldn't balance. This is performative, he said to the room. We'll clear it up and send a letter. Morris stood when he passed. You need to stop, she said softly. He didn't slow. I followed Monroe back to his office and opened my phone to scroll the photos I'd taken of the audio transcripts, because I was my mother's son and redundancy is religion. He read quietly, lips moving. This is good. Not clean, but good. What's clean? Wire, he said. Warrants. Time. I don't have time. The bank's already at our door. He nodded at a corkboard where a map of Denver's industrial corridor was pocked with pins. You'd be surprised how slow a collapse can be. It always looks set into the man at the bottom. When he let me go at 4 a.m., the city smelled like wet concrete and relief. Mara waited outside, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. He thinks you set him up, she said. Didn't you? She had to laugh that wasn't a laugh. I brought the photo of your mom's signature. I told Monroe you wouldn't stop unless someone bigger than Damon told you to sit. I don't take orders from men who wear watches to bed, I said. And she half smiled. Then her face went serious. He has your ledger, she said. I went cold from spine to ankles. What? She went to the shop after you left for the hotel, she said. He used the back stair. I think he knew exactly where to look. My mattress, I said. He said you should see what Evan thinks proof is. He laughed. I said it wasn't funny. The apartment door was open when I got there. The mattress had been lifted and dropped, skewed like someone sat on it. The manila folder lay on the floor, splayed. The pages were there, some, not all. A note on the dresser in Damon's handwriting. Nice index. You forgot the part where you lose. I sat on the floor amid my own careful lines and felt like a man who built a boat and discovered the water was inside. The room smelled like someone else's cologne and my own panic. At 8, Dad called. voice small. He brought the watch back, he said. Said it didn't fit. Did Mom see him? She went to church, he said. I stared at the ceiling and counted to whatever number people count to when they promise themselves something they can't yet afford. I'm going to end this, I said into the empty room, but I'm not going to become him to do it. That afternoon, I took what pages remained of the ledger to Monroe and watched him not promise to fix anything. He took the pages like a man accepts a dog he didn't ask for. We'll corroborate, he said. We'll pull bank footage, vendor statements. And if he torches the rest before you get there, then we see what burns and who's holding the match. That night, the river smelled like algae and summer warming up. I stood on the bridge again, not to plan another sprinkler trick, but to try on the idea of walking away. I lasted 8 minutes. Then I went back to the shop, locked both deadbolts, and slept with a wrench under my pillow like superstition could pass for strategy. In the morning, a text from an unknown number. Bring the truck titles to Trent by noon. We'll make you whole. The link below it led to a calendar invite titled Hart Holdings Restructure. I felt my jaw lock like a bad hinge. Damon knew my schedule. He knew my tells. He expected me to choose the path that looked like cooperation. I put the titles in a folder and drove to the address on the invite. Halfway there, I took an exit to Brighton Boulevard and parked under the viaduct where pigeons made a racket like gossip. I texted Monroe a selfie with the folder and coordinates. Meeting Trent. If I don't text by 2, assume they tried to make me helpful. He wrote back 2 words, be boring. I thought of Damon on the balcony, hugging me while robbing me, and decided the only thing he never prepared for was me not giving him a show. Could I be boring enough to make a wolf yawn?
Trent's office occupied a reclaimed brick space, smelling of coffee beans and fresh drywall. Industrial chic, ductwork on purpose, Edison bulbs trying too hard. He gestured me to a chair and folded his hands like prayer was a habit he'd monetized. You brought them? I brought copies, I said, placing the folder on the table. Originals are with my attorney. I didn't have an attorney. I had a cousin who sold roofs. The sentence felt like wearing someone else's jacket. Not mine, but warm. We're all on the same team, he said. We can roll assets to protect the brand. The brand where my mother's name bends wrong, I said. He held my gaze a breath too long. You think you can run Hart without Damon? I think I can run a van and pay people, I said. We can make you whole, he said again, like he'd learned the phrase in a class. I don't want whole, I said. I want honest. Something in his face shifted. The moment a salesman realizes you're not buying, not because of price, but because you've remembered you don't need the thing. He slid a document toward me. Sign this, he said. Acknowledgement that you placed the titles in my custody voluntarily. Voluntarily? I repeated. The word tasted like a penny. It protects you, he said smoothly. Paper cuts both ways. I looked at the clock, 1:38. I pictured Monroe in a Crown Vic 2 blocks away, pretending paperwork while watching a door. I pictured Damon checking his phone and telling someone, he'll cave, he always caves. I stood. I'm not trading paper for quiet, and I'm not trading my father's company for my brother's version of love. Trent didn't frown. Men like him don't. He raised one eyebrow the width of a thumbnail. Careful who you accuse of love. It makes juries soft. I left the copies on the table and walked out into the bright Denver afternoon where the heat turned diesel into a smell you could chew. At the corner, a kid on a scooter zipped past, laughing at nothing. My phone buzzed. Monroe. Nice exit. At 1:59, my screen lit again. Damon, you're embarrassing yourself. Come to the shop. I almost turned right. I turned left instead and went to my parents. Mom was at the table with 2 mugs and a slice of pie like she'd prepared for both outcomes. "Are you hungry?" she asked. "Yes," I said. It was the first honest sentence of the day. And there it was, the midpoint choice. I could keep staging clever scenes until a judge had to care, or I could stay boring, steady, and build a case that didn't need an audience. I chose boring, like a man chooses a handrail on black ice. But could I hold on when Damon tried to make me slip?
Quiet plans never stay quiet around Damon. That evening, he posted a photo of the Heart Cares gala check on the company Instagram. $250,000 raised, his smile bright enough to bleach teeth and other mouths. The caption, "For family, for Denver, for tomorrow." Comments bloomed like algae. "Proud of you, community leader, what an example." I nearly commented a paragraph of math. I put the phone down and fixed my parents' leaky faucet instead. The drip had the rhythm of a heart calming. Monroe texted, "Search warrant in motion, needed day, don't poke." At midnight, the shop alarm chirped. I had the app on my phone and the push notification said, "Back door, opened." I drove without remembering my keys, muscle memory doing what conscience would have argued with. The alley smelled like wet cardboard. The back door was propped with the same screw bucket as before. Inside, the office light was on. I heard a voice, Damon, low and intent, speaking to someone whose answers were too soft to catch. I stepped into the doorway. Damon didn't jump. He looked like he'd been expecting me for years. "You still have the tracker on the alarm," he said. "Cute. Who were you talking to?" He stepped aside. Dad sat in the chair, hands folded like school. The watch Damon had returned lay on the desk, its face turned up, second hand gliding. Mom stood in the corner, eyes doing that shifting back and forth like she was listening to a storm on 2 radios. "Tell him," Damon said to Dad, gentle as a con. Dad cleared his throat. I signed the paper for the beneficiary. Your brother brought it. I thought it said Heart." "It said Holdings," I said, the word turning my mouth dry. "He said that was us. Heart is Heart." Damon looked at me like a tutor proud of a slow pupil. "Everyone wants simple stories, Ev. You give them a simple story and they'll carry it for you." Mom stepped forward then, small and shaking. "He told me if we didn't sign, the bank would take the house. He said you'd be out of work." "I was out of work," I said, but my voice didn't have teeth. "Stop," Damon said lightly. "Just stop making this a tragedy. It's a math problem." He slid a folder toward me. Inside, copies of checks with my name on them, pay stubs, photos of me pulling the sprinkler panel's door open at the riverside. "You like evidence?" I brought some. Maintenance fraud, property damage, interference with business. "You triggered the test for me," I said. "I didn't make you touch the panel, and donors don't like soggy suits." Monroe's text arrived then, a buzz on the table. Warrant signed, on our way, 10 minutes. I realized then what I hadn't seen. Damon didn't come to destroy files. He came to build a counter-narrative with my parents as unwilling exhibits. He would tell Monroe I staged a tantrum at the gala and was now trying to steal files to cover my sabotage. He would show pictures that made me look like the unhinged brother. He would use Mom's shaking hands and Dad's wrong-leaning H to paint himself as the only adult in the room. "Come outside, Mom, please." She didn't move. Her eyes looked like someone had turned down the contrast. Damon's smile thinned. "See?" he said softly. "No one wants your version." I took my phone out and placed it on the desk. "Then let's let a stranger want it." I pressed call. Monroe answered on the second ring. "We're here." Red and blue bled across the office walls a minute later, the light turning all our faces into versions of ourselves we'd never met. The uniforms filed in with efficient boredom. Monroe followed, paper in hand, voice careful. He handed Hayes, who had arrived smelling like litigation, the warrant and began reading it the way priests read gospel. Damon did his performance, offended, hurt, collaborative. Then the second twist. Monroe lifted the watch off the desk, turned it over, and popped the back with a tiny tool like a man opening a secret only he's allowed to know. Inside, a wafer-thin SD card. He held it up between forefinger and thumb. That's a lot of storage for a present, he said. Damon's mouth opened and didn't immediately find a word. Hayes recovered first. Irrelevant, he said smoothly. Privacy. Monroe smiled like someone who'd already seen the footage. We'll let a judge enjoy that argument, he said. Mr. Hart, you installed a recording device in your father's watch? Damon's eyes slid to Dodd, then to me. I document, he said. No one believes you if you don't document. On this, we agree, Monroe said. He bogged the watch, tugged it, and nodded to a uniform to begin the official ransack. Drawers opening, files in boxes, the room becoming an after photo you look at to remember the before. Mom sat down. She looked at me like a window looks at rain. Resigned, forgiving, none of it. Don't let them make your father a prop, she said quietly. I won't. I didn't know if it was a promise or a threat. Damon watched the boxes go as if they were a magic trick he hadn't learned yet. This is temporary, he said to no one in particular. I am temporary. I wanted to believe that. But what if the thing that made Damon possible didn't live in him alone?
They didn't cuff Damon that night. Hayes made calls that oiled doors. Monroe made a face that said the clock had started. The watch went downtown. The files followed. I went home and sat on the floor of the apartment and listened to the baseboard heater hum like a tired animal. The sweetness in the air was gone. The room smelled like dust, and something burned. At dawn, my phone lit with a text from Mara. He's at the river. He thinks you'll meet him. A pin dropped on the map at the same pedestrian bridge where the story had pivoted. I didn't answer. I went anyway. He was there, of course, hands on the rail, looking at the water like it was a mirror. The city was soft with morning, the river the color of nickels. Joggers thudded past, headphones in, oblivious to the fact that a family could end on a Tuesday before breakfast. I should have left when I was 18, he said without turning. You should have let me, I said. I was 14. I didn't own the door. He looked at me then, and for a second I saw the boy who bet my Halloween money on a game I didn't understand and came back with stories instead of bills. I'm not the villain you need me to be. I don't need a villain. I need receipts. He laughed without sound. Monroe thinks he's caught me, he said. He has nothing but feelings and a watch. Your watch, I said. Our fathers, he said, and the pronoun made me want to push him into the water more than any number. You know the difference between us, Ev? You want to fix the unit. I want to own the building. You used Mom's name. You used Dad's body. He stared past me at the hotel where last night's donors were probably sleeping like trust. You think I woke up wanting any of this? He asked. I woke up wanting not to be poor. I woke up wanting the bank to know my name. A train horn bellowed from somewhere behind the warehouses, the note wide enough to stand inside. I stepped closer to him because distance makes people say braver lies. I took you, Mara, because you could. I took the company because I could. I took our parents' safety because I could. He looked genuinely puzzled. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Take what you can carry? I thought of Dad's watch ticking even when no one wanted it to. I thought of Mom's grocery list with the H crossed too straight when she was upset. I thought of Mrs. Lou's lemon cookies and the way she said you look kinder and how shame lit up hot under my skin because I knew she meant tired. What do you want from me? He asked. I need an ending, I said. He smiled sadly. You won't like mine, he said. He lifted one leg onto the bottom rail, not high enough for drama, high enough for my heart to drop through the slats. Don't, I said, the word a reflex more than a plea. I'm not going to jump, he said. Yet. He looked at me over his shoulder. But imagine the letter Ev, hounded by his brother, framed by a bitter tech, a good man ruined by family politics. They'll carve it on a GoFundMe. I stepped closer to him.
The metal touched my thigh. I could smell his cologne, citrus and something darker, the exact scent the apartment had carried after he lifted my mattress. "You can still stop," I said. "So can you. Walk away. Let the company die if it has to. Let Mom keep her church. Let Dad watch his shows. And you? I'll leave. You can have the carcass." I reached into my pocket and felt the recorder. The cheap one, redundant to the phone in my other pocket because I never stopped being my mother's son. I clicked it on. "Say it. Say you forged her name." He smiled, teeth small in the morning light. "No." The train horn moaned again, closer. A jogger passed and gave us a glance like we were two men arguing about fishing. I did a thing then I'll never be proud of, but I won't lie about it either. I put my hand on Damon's belt and pulled him off the rail, not hard enough to hurt, hard enough to remind his body it lived. He stumbled, swore, shoved me back hard enough my spine hit metal. For a second, we were two boys in a yard, dirt under nails, Mom yelling from a window. His eyes softened, and it made me angrier than his sneer hat. "You're not built for this," he said again, quiet. "Maybe not. But I am built to stand in front of you until the paperwork makes sense." He shook his head like a disappointed pastor and walked away. Not fast, not slow. I let him go because the choice wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the watch. The files, the wrong-leaning H, the men with boxes leaving our office, the bank that now had to read us aloud. I leaned on the rail and let the river's cold breath hit my face. A text from Monroe. Warrant number 2 signed. Fraud and wire. He'll run. We'll be waiting. I typed back. He won't jump. He wants witnesses. Then I went home and showered until the water went from hot to honest. What version of a brother walks away before the end?
2 weeks later, the Denver Post ran a story below the fold. Local business owner charged in fraud probe. The photo caught Damon exiting a courthouse, chin up, Hayes a half step behind like a plan. The article used words that made my skin feel too tight. Alleged, scheme, guarantee, altered documentation, beneficiary change. My name appeared once, spelled correctly, as a technician at the company who provided information to authorities. I cut the article out and tucked it into the ledger's empty place. Monroe called to say the watch contained hours of recordings, Damon narrating strategy to himself the way narcissists do when they need an audience. "You'd be amazed how many men confess to their own jewelry," he said dryly. The insurer reversed the beneficiary change. The bank negotiated a payment plan that wouldn't bankrupt my parents, mostly because Monroe's file made the loan officer look like a man who didn't read. Mara moved out of Damon's condo the same day he moved into county housing. She brought me a box of my things I hadn't asked for, 2 mugs, a framed photo from a hike, a t-shirt that still smelled like her detergent. "I'm not asking to be forgiven," she said in the doorway of my apartment above the shop. "I'm asking to be believed when I say I'm sorry." "I believe you." And we stood there like two people who understand that love doesn't die, it just runs out of places to live. Dad started wearing a watch he could take off by himself. Mom started writing lists with an H that leaned wherever it wanted. The shop reopened under Hart HVAC because our lawyer cousin explained why the old name had become a liability. The red house and the 8 came back and made the Vans look like a promise again. We hired 2 techs who wanted boring jobs that paid on Fridays. I learned to like boring the way you learn to like unsweetened tea. On purpose. Monroe sent me a copy of the recording where Damon told Trent to roll the debt and let the old entity bleed. I listened once and then never again. I put the USB in a drawer with the wedding band I didn't wear. The drawer felt like a museum for objects that used to tell a story I didn't need anymore. On a Sunday, the river smelled like snow even though the sky wasn't ready. I stood on the bridge and let the rails cool my palms. A kid tossed a rock into the water and cheered at the splosh. A train passed and the horn made the air stand still. I thought about calling Damon, then didn't. Some stories don't need sequels. When I got home, Mom had left a note on my counter. Lasagna in the fridge. Dad says stop skipping lunch. The H leaned left. They made me smile. The apartment smelled like dust and soap. The sweetness never came back. Maybe it was living the part of grief that wants to make a villain, so the ending feels designed. Maybe it was Damon's cologne. Maybe it was me. The ledger went back under the mattress. Not because I needed it, but because I like knowing where the weight is. What if the thing that kept me honest wasn't the evidence, but the act of writing it down?
When people ask how it felt to plan my brother's death, I tell them the truth. I changed the definition of the word. I wanted him gone from rooms where his smile rewrote gravity. I wanted his voice to stop being the loudest thing in our house. I wanted my parents' names to stop being prop money. I learned that planning an ending is easier than living through the middle. The middle is paper and waiting and choosing boredom when spectacle would taste better. It's telling the detective your mother's H leans straight when she's upset and feeling like you've handed a stranger your family's secret alphabet. It's standing on a bridge and pulling a man off a rail because you refuse to let the river write the headline. I don't feel clean. I do feel accurate. And accuracy, it turns out, is a kind of mercy you extend to yourself when a better one isn't available. If you want a moral, make it this. The death I planned was the end of Damon's story as the only version anyone heard. He's still breathing. He still texts from numbers with no names. But when he speaks in rooms now, other voices answer back. I fix units. I pay people on Fridays. I eat lasagna. I sleep some nights and count the sounds of the building the nights I don't. That feels like survival, which is the only happy ending I believe in.
I didn't kill my brother. I killed the story where he was the hero. And I learned that sometimes that's the only kind of death a family can live with.